The gunshot echoed through the canyon just as Preston Rawlins dove behind a boulder, his horse screaming in panic somewhere in the darkness behind him. Blood seeped through his shirt where a bullet had grazed his shoulder, and he pressed his palm against the wound while trying to catch his breath in the dry New Mexico air. It was 1883, and he had tracked the McCallister gang all the way from Lordsburg, only to ride straight into their ambush in these God-forsaken rocks. He waited in the silence, listening for movement, but the night had gone quiet except for the wind whistling through the canyon. His horse had bolted, taking his rifle and most of his supplies with it. All he had left was his Colt revolver with 4 bullets remaining and the knife in his boot. The moon hung low over the desert landscape, casting strange shadows across the rock formations that jutted up from the earth like broken teeth. Preston knew he could not stay where he was. The gang would circle back at first light to make sure he was dead, and he needed to find shelter and water before blood loss made him too weak to move. He pressed forward through the canyon, using the moonlight to navigate between the towering walls of stone. His shoulder throbbed with each step, and his shirt was soaked through with blood by the time he spotted something unusual carved into the canyon wall. At first he thought it was just another shadow, but as he drew closer, he realized it was the mouth of a cave, partially hidden behind a tumble of rocks and scrub brush. He stumbled toward it, desperate for any kind of cover. The opening was narrow, barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through, but he managed to push himself inside. The temperature dropped immediately once he entered the cave. Preston fumbled for the matches in his vest pocket, striking one to get a better look at his surroundings. The cave stretched back further than the match light could reach, but what caught his attention was the evidence of habitation. Someone had been living here. There were carefully arranged stones forming a fire pit, blankets folded in a corner, and what looked like dried meat hanging from a natural shelf in the rock. The match burned his fingers and he dropped it, plunging everything back into darkness. He struck another, and that was when he saw her. She stood at the back of the cave, pressed against the wall with eyes wide with terror. She held a knife in her hand, the blade catching the match light, and her whole body trembled. Her dark hair hung past her shoulders in tangled waves, and her dress, though worn and patched, had once been fine quality. She could not have been more than 25 years old, but her eyes held the wariness of someone who had seen too much. "Please," Preston said, his voice rough. "I am not going to hurt you. I have been shot. I just need somewhere to rest." She did not lower the knife. "Get out," she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. "Get out of my home." "I cannot." He swayed on his feet, the blood loss making him dizzy. "They will kill me if I go back out there." "Please, just until morning." The match went out again. In the darkness he heard her breathing, quick and frightened. Then she spoke again, her voice slightly steadier. "Light another match, slowly." He did as she asked, his movements careful and deliberate. In the flickering light he could see her studying him, taking in his badge, his wound, the exhaustion written across his face. "You are a lawman," she said. "Deputy Marshal out of Lordsburg," he confirmed. "Preston Rawlins, and you are—" She hesitated for a long moment before answering. "Olivia Crane." The name struck him immediately. Every lawman in the territory had heard about Olivia Crane. 3 years ago, she had been set to testify against Richard Vance, a wealthy rancher who had murdered her father over a land dispute. But before the trial, Vance's men had attacked the stagecoach transporting her to Santa Fe. The official report said everyone aboard had been killed, their bodies burned beyond recognition. Vance had walked free, and the case had gone cold. But here she stood, very much alive, hiding in a cave in the middle of nowhere. "You are supposed to be dead," Preston said, the words escaping before he could stop them. Fear flashed across her face and she raised the knife higher. I am dead. Olivia Crane died in that fire. You need to forget you saw me. I am bleeding out, he said, his vision starting to blur. Right now, I cannot remember my own name, let alone yours, but I need help, Miss Crane, please. She watched him for another long moment, then seemed to make a decision. Sit down before you fall down. And do not make me regret this. Preston lowered himself carefully to the ground, his back against the cave wall. Olivia moved past him to the cave entrance, checking outside before pulling a screen of brush more fully across the opening. Then she returned with a candle, which she lit with practiced efficiency. The small flame threw dancing shadows across the cave walls, revealing more details of her hidden life. She had fashioned a remarkably livable space from this natural shelter. Bundles of dried herbs hung from crevices in the rock. Clay pots held water and what looked like grain. A thin mattress made from layered blankets occupied one corner. But what struck Preston most was how neat everything was, how carefully organized. This was not the temporary camp of someone passing through. This was a home, created with the expectation of a long stay. Olivia knelt beside him and examined his wound with surprisingly steady hands. The bullet went through, she said. That is good, but it needs to be cleaned and bound properly. You have medical training. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. My mother was a physician's daughter. She taught me some things before she passed. She worked efficiently, heating water over a small fire she built in the pit, cleaning the wound with strips of cloth that she had clearly boiled for such purposes. Preston gritted his teeth against the pain but did not cry out. He had been shot before, though never quite this badly. What happened out there? Olivia asked as she worked, her voice quiet. I was tracking the McCallister gang. They have been robbing stages and trains from here to Texas. Got word they were heading this way, so I followed. Rode right into an ambush like a damned fool. You should not have come alone. My partner was sick. I thought I could just scout their position and report back. He laughed bitterly. Pride goes before a fall, my mother used to say. Olivia finished bandaging his shoulder with strips of clean cloth. You will need to rest. The wound is not fatal, but you have lost blood. Do you have water? My horse ran off with everything. She fetched one of her clay pots and held it to his lips. The water was cool and tasted faintly mineral, but it was the best thing Preston had ever drunk. He drank deeply, then forced himself to stop, aware that she probably had limited supply. Where do you get water out here? He asked. There is a spring about a mile from here, hidden in the rocks. I go there at night to refill my containers. She set the pot aside and sat back, studying him with those wary eyes. How long will you stay? Just until I can travel. A day, maybe two. Then I will go back to Lordsburg and send men after the McCallister gang. And what will you tell them about me? Preston met her gaze steadily. Nothing, if that is what you want. But I have to ask, Miss Crane, why are you hiding out here? Richard Vance died 6 months ago, threw his horse taking offense while drunk. Broke his neck. You could go back now. There is no one left to hurt you. The color drained from Olivia's face. He is dead. You are certain? I saw the body myself at the funeral. Half the territory turned out to make sure he was really gone. She stood abruptly and walked to the cave entrance, staring out at the night. Her hands shook as she gripped the rock wall. I did not know, she whispered. I have been here so long, I stopped paying attention to the outside world. I stopped hoping. Preston wanted to go to her to offer comfort, but he was too weak to stand. How did you survive? Everyone thought you died in that fire. Olivia was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was distant, lost in memory. When Vance's men attacked the stage, I jumped out the back before it went over the cliff. I hid in the brush and watched them shoot the driver and the other passengers. They doused everything in kerosene and set it ablaze. I stayed hidden for 2 days, terrified they would come back to look for bodies. When I finally came out, I realized I had a choice. I could go back and keep trying to testify, keep living in fear that they would try again, or I could disappear, become someone Vance would never look for. So you came here. I wandered for weeks. I had a little money hidden in my boot, enough to buy supplies from small settlements where no one asked questions. I told people I was a widow heading west to start over. Eventually, I found this cave. It had everything I needed: shelter, water nearby, game to hunt. I taught myself to live off the land. It has been 3 years now. 3 years alone, Preston said, unable to imagine such isolation. Did you never get lonely? She turned back to face him, and in the candlelight, he could see tears glistening on her cheeks. Every single day, but loneliness seemed better than death. They fell into silence, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. Outside, the wind picked up, howling through the canyon like a chorus of ghosts. Preston felt himself drifting, exhaustion and blood loss pulling him toward sleep. "Rest now," Olivia said, her voice softer than before. "We can talk more tomorrow." He wanted to protest, to tell her he needed to keep watch, but his body would not cooperate. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was Olivia settling near the cave entrance with her knife in hand, keeping watch over him while he slept. Preston woke to sunlight streaming through gaps in the brush covering the cave entrance and the smell of something cooking. His shoulder ached fiercely, but the dizziness from blood loss had passed. He sat up carefully, taking stock of his surroundings in the daylight. The cave was larger than he had realized, stretching back into darkness that the sunlight could not penetrate. Olivia had made good use of every inch of space. Dried plants and herbs hung in organized bundles. Animal pelts were stretched on frames to cure. She even had a small garden growing near the entrance where sunlight could reach it, with what looked like beans and squash climbing up stakes. Olivia herself sat by the fire, stirring something in a pot. She had tied her hair back with a strip of leather, and in the morning light, Preston could see that despite the harsh conditions of her life, she remained beautiful. There was a strength in the set of her shoulders, a resilience in the way she moved that spoke of someone who had adapted and survived. "You are awake," she said without turning around. "How do you feel?" "Like I have been shot," he admitted, "but better than last night." "What is that you are cooking?" "Rabbit stew. I set snares in the canyon, caught 2 this morning." She ladled some into a clay bowl and brought it to him. "Eat. You need to regain your strength." The stew was simple but surprisingly good, flavored with wild herbs and root vegetables she must have gathered from the surrounding area. Preston ate slowly, watching her move about the cave with the efficiency of long practice. "You have built a real life here," he observed. "I have built survival," she corrected. "There is a difference, is there? You have shelter, food, water. You have made this cave into a home." Olivia sat down across from him, her expression troubled. "A home implies choice. I was driven here by fear. That is not the same as choosing this life." "But you could choose differently now. Vance is dead. You could go back." "Go back to what?" The question came out sharp, almost angry. "My father is dead. Our ranch was sold to pay his debts. I have no family left, no home to return to, and I have been dead for 3 years. What would people say if I suddenly reappeared? They would have questions I do not want to answer." Preston set down his empty bowl. "They would say you are a survivor. They would say you are brave for staying alive against impossible odds. Or they would say I am a coward for hiding instead of fighting. No one who knows what you went through would say that." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and Preston saw the depth of pain in her eyes. You do not understand. When Vance's men attacked that stage, when I watched them murder innocent people, something inside me broke. I was so afraid, Preston. I am still afraid. The thought of going back out there, of being around people again, of trusting anyone, it terrifies me more than living alone in this cave. He understood then. It was not just Vance she had been hiding from all these years. It was the trauma itself, the memories of violence and loss that had driven her into isolation. She had built walls around herself, both literal and figurative, and the idea of tearing them down was overwhelming. Fear is natural, Preston said gently. After what you survived, anyone would be afraid, but you cannot let it control your whole life. You deserve more than just survival, Olivia. You deserve to actually live. And what do you know about what I deserve? The words came out defensive, but he could hear the uncertainty beneath them, the part of her that wanted to believe him. I know that you are too young to spend the rest of your life alone in a cave. I know that you are strong and resourceful and brave, even if you do not feel that way. And I know that the world needs more people like you in it, not fewer. Olivia stood abruptly and walked to the cave entrance, pushing aside the brush to look out at the canyon. What am I supposed to do? Just walk into Lordsburg and announce that I am alive? Pick up where I left off as if nothing happened. Preston pushed himself to his feet, ignoring the protest from his wounded shoulder. He crossed to stand beside her, looking out at the stark beauty of the New Mexico landscape. You do not have to decide everything right now. But maybe you could start small. Come back to Lordsburg with me. Stay for a few days, see how it feels. If you hate it, you can always return here. You make it sound so simple. I know it is not. But I also know that you did not go to all the trouble of surviving these 3 years just to waste the rest of your life hiding. She turned to face him, her eyes searching his face. Why do you care what happens to me? You did not even know I existed until last night. It was a fair question, and Preston took a moment to consider his answer. Because I became a lawman to help people. And because I think that if I ride away from here and leave you in this cave, knowing what I know, I will regret it for the rest of my life. Something shifted in Olivia's expression, a crack in the armor she had built around herself. I do not know if I can do this. You do not have to do it alone. I will help you if you will let me. She studied him for a long moment, and Preston found himself hoping she would say yes more than he had hoped for anything in a long time. There was something about Olivia Crane that drew him in, something beyond just wanting to help someone in need. In her eyes, he saw a reflection of his own loneliness, his own struggles to connect with others in a harsh and unforgiving world. I need time to think, she said finally. Your wound needs more time to heal anyway. Stay another day and I will give you my answer. Preston nodded, accepting her terms. That is fair. They spent the rest of the day in a surprisingly comfortable companionship. Olivia showed him around her small domain, pointing out the tricks she had learned for survival. She had mapped out the entire canyon system, knew where to find edible plants where game animals traveled, where to collect rainwater when the spring ran low. She had books too, a small collection she had traded for at a settlement months ago, their pages worn from repeated reading. I never learned to read well as a child, she admitted. But out here, with nothing but time, I taught myself properly. These books have been my companions. Preston recognized some of the titles. Shakespeare, the Bible, a collection of poetry by Walt Whitman. You have good taste. I have what the trader had available, she said with a slight smile. But yes, I have grown fond of them, especially the poetry. There is something about Whitman's words that makes me feel less alone. As the sun began to set, painting the canyon walls in shades of orange and red, Preston helped Olivia prepare dinner. She showed him how to grind corn into meal using 2 stones, how to mix it with water and wild onions to make a kind of flatbread that she cooked on a hot stone near the fire. It was simple food, but there was something deeply satisfying about preparing it together, working side by side in the growing darkness. "Tell me about Lordsburg," Olivia said as they ate. "What is it like now, growing?" Preston said. "The railroad came through 2 years ago, and that changed everything. We have got more businesses, more people moving in. There is talk of building a proper schoolhouse. And is it safe?" He considered the question carefully. "Safer than it was. We still get trouble, men like the McCallister gang passing through. But the law has a stronger presence now. People are trying to build something lasting, not just grab what they can and move on. Do you like it there?" "Most days. It can be lonely work being a lawman. People keep their distance, like getting too close might bring them trouble, but I believe in what I do. I believe in trying to make things better, even if it is just a little bit at a time." Olivia nodded slowly. "That is a good thing to believe in." They talked late into the night, sharing stories of their lives before their paths had crossed in this hidden cave. Preston told her about growing up on a small ranch in Texas, about losing his parents to cholera and drifting west looking for purpose. Olivia spoke haltingly at first, then with growing ease about her childhood in Santa Fe, about her father who had been stern but loving, about the mother she had lost when she was 12. "I always thought I would get married, have children, live a normal life," she said softly. "Funny how things turn out." "It is not too late for that," Preston said. "You are still young. You could still have all of those things." "Could I?" She looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. "After everything that has happened, after 3 years of living like this, am I even the same person who wanted those things?" "I do not know," Preston admitted, "but I think the only way to find out is to give yourself the chance." Olivia was quiet for a long time, staring into the dying fire. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I will go with you to Lordsburg, but if it becomes too much, if I cannot handle it, you have to promise you will bring me back here. Promise me, Preston." Relief flooded through him, though he tried not to show it too obviously. "I promise. We will go at whatever pace you need, and if you want to come back, I will bring you myself." She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself as if suddenly cold despite the fire. "When should we leave?" "Give it 2 more days. Let my shoulder heal a bit more, and you can take that time to gather what you want to bring with you." "I do not have much worth bringing." "Bring what matters to you. The books, if you want them. Anything that will make the transition easier." Olivia looked around the cave that had been her sanctuary for 3 years, and Preston could see the conflict written on her face. This place had saved her life, given her shelter when she had nowhere else to go. Leaving it behind meant stepping back into a world that had once tried to kill her. But it also meant the possibility of something more than mere survival. The next 2 days passed in a strange liminal space between Olivia's old life and whatever came next. Preston's shoulder improved steadily under her careful tending, and he found himself growing stronger. He helped her with daily tasks, checking her snares, hauling water from the spring, gathering firewood. It felt good to be useful, to have a purpose beyond just healing. He also found himself watching Olivia when she did not realize it, noticing the graceful way she moved, the intelligence in her eyes when she solved a problem, the rare smile that transformed her whole face. She was unlike any woman he had ever known, shaped by hardship into something both fragile and incredibly strong. On the morning they were set to leave, Olivia packed her belongings into a worn canvas bag. She took the books, some extra clothing she had carefully mended, a few tools she had fashioned for herself. She also carefully dug up a small wooden box from beneath a stone near the back of the cave. "What is that?" Preston asked. She opened it to show him. Inside was a photograph in a silver frame, showing a severe-looking man with kind eyes standing beside a young woman. "My parents," she said. "This is all I have left of them. I hid it here where it would be safe. They would be proud of you, you know, for surviving. I hope so." She closed the box carefully and tucked it into her bag. "I am ready, I think, or as ready as I will ever be." They left the cave in the early morning light, and Preston watched Olivia turn back one last time to look at the place that had been her home. He saw her memorize its position, marking the landmarks that would lead her back if she needed to return. Then she squared her shoulders and turned to face the trail ahead. "We will need to find my horse first," Preston said. Hopefully she did not run too far. They tracked the horse's path through the canyon, finding her grazing in a small meadow about 2 miles from where Preston had been shot. She whinnied when she saw him, and he was relieved to find her unharmed, his rifle and supplies still intact in the saddle bags. "She is beautiful," Olivia said, approaching the horse cautiously. "What is her name?" "Dusty. Not very original, I know, but it suits her." He watched as Olivia reached out to stroke the horse's neck, her touch gentle and sure. "Have you ridden before?" "Not in 3 years. But I used to love riding when I was younger." "Good, because we will both be on Dusty for the journey back. My shoulder is not quite up to walking 30 miles yet." He helped Olivia onto the horse, then swung up behind her. It was intimate, sitting so close, and he could feel her tense at first before gradually relaxing against him. They set off at a steady walk, making their way out of the canyon system and onto the open desert that stretched between the mountains and Lordsburg. The journey took 2 days. They traveled slowly, stopping frequently to rest both Preston's shoulder and to give Olivia time to adjust to being in the open again. The first time they saw other travelers in the distance, a small wagon train heading west, Olivia went rigid with fear. "It is all right," Preston said quietly. "They are just settlers. We do not have to go near them." But Olivia was breathing hard, her hands gripping the saddle horn until her knuckles went white. "There are so many of them. I forgot what it was like seeing so many people at once." Preston steered Dusty away from the wagon train, giving them a wide berth. He could feel Olivia trembling, and he wished he could take away her fear. "We can stop for a while if you need to." She shook her head stubbornly. "No, I need to push through this. I cannot run scared every time I see another person." Her determination impressed him, even as he worried about pushing her too hard too fast. But she was right that she needed to face her fears if she was ever going to reclaim her life. They camped that night under the stars, and Preston showed Olivia how to read the constellations his father had taught him as a boy. She listened with genuine interest, asking questions, pointing out patterns she had noticed during her nights alone in the cave. "The stars were my only company for so long," she said. "I used to pretend they were friends watching over me. It sounds foolish, I know." "It does not sound foolish at all. It sounds like you found a way to cope with an impossible situation." She turned to look at him, her face half in shadow from the firelight. "Preston, can I ask you something? Anything? Why are you really doing this? Taking me back to Lordsburg, helping me start over. You barely know me. What do you get out of it?" It was a question Preston had been asking himself, and he was not entirely sure he knew the answer. "I suppose I see something in you that I recognize. I have been alone most of my life, even when I am surrounded by people. There is a difference between being alone and being lonely, and I have been both. When I look at you, I see someone who understands that feeling, and I think maybe we could help each other not feel so alone anymore." Olivia was quiet for a long moment, her eyes reflecting the firelight. I think I understand what you mean. Plus, he added with a slight smile, you saved my life. Seemed only fair to return the favor. She laughed, a soft sound that made something warm bloom in Preston's chest. It was the first time he had heard her truly laugh, and he found himself wanting to hear it again. They reached Lordsburg late the following afternoon, approaching from the east as the sun began its descent toward the western mountains. The town had grown since Preston had left it just days before, or maybe it just seemed larger to someone who had been living in isolation for 3 years. Olivia went very quiet as they rode down the main street, and Preston could feel her withdrawing into herself. "We will go to the boarding house," Preston said. "Mrs. Reynolds, who runs it, is discreet and kind. You will have your own room, and we can figure out the next steps from there." Olivia nodded but did not speak. Her eyes darted from building to building, from person to person, taking in everything with a mixture of wonder and fear. Preston guided Dusty to the boarding house at the quiet end of town, a neat 2-story building with a porch that ran along the front. Martha Reynolds was a widow in her 50s who had been running the boarding house for as long as Preston had been in Lordsburg. She came out onto the porch when she heard them approach, wiping her hands on her apron. "Deputy Rawlins, we had heard you were shot," she said, her eyes taking in his bandaged shoulder. Then her gaze moved to Olivia and her expression shifted to concern. "And who is this?" "This is Miss Olivia Crane," Preston said, helping Olivia down from the horse. "She needs a room and discretion." "Can you provide both?" Martha's eyes widened slightly at the name, but to her credit she asked no questions. "Of course. Come inside, dear. You look exhausted." Olivia followed Martha into the boarding house while Preston took care of Dusty. By the time he came inside, Martha had already shown Olivia to a room on the 2nd floor and was bringing up hot water for a bath. "That girl looks like she has been through hell," Martha said quietly when she passed Preston on the stairs. "She has. But she is trying to come back from it. She will need friends, Mrs. Reynolds, people she can trust." Martha nodded firmly. "You can count on me, and call me Martha, for heaven's sake. We have known each other long enough." Preston went to his own small room at the boarding house and changed his shirt, examining his shoulder in the mirror. The wound was healing well, thanks to Olivia's care. He would have a scar, but he had plenty of those already. This one, at least, came with a good story. He found Olivia in the common room an hour later. She had bathed and changed into a clean dress that Martha had loaned her, and she looked more like the woman in the photograph from her father's ranch than the wild creature he had found in the cave. But her eyes still held that wariness, that readiness to bolt at any moment. "How are you doing?" Preston asked, settling into the chair across from her. "It is strange," she said, "being inside a real house again with walls and windows and other people nearby. I keep listening for sounds that do not belong, threats that might be coming. My body does not know how to relax. That will take time. You have spent 3 years in survival mode. You cannot expect to turn that off in a day. Martha has been very kind. She did not ask any questions, just made me feel welcome. That was nice." Preston smiled. "Martha is good people. Most folks in Lordsburg are once you get to know them." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and Preston found himself content just to be near her, to know she was safe and warm and beginning to heal. But he knew there were practical matters that needed to be addressed. "Tomorrow, I will need to report to Marshal Tucker about the McCallister gang," Preston said. "I will have to tell him what happened where I was shot. If you want, I can leave out any mention of you, or if you are ready, we can tell him you are alive. It is your choice." Olivia twisted her hands in her lap. "If I tell people I am alive, what happens then? Will there be questions? An investigation? Probably some questions, yes, People will want to know where you have been, how you survived, but you do not have to tell them everything. You can keep the details private if you want. And then what? What do I do after that? I have no money, no home, no skills that anyone needs. You have plenty of skills, Preston corrected. You know how to survive, how to take care of yourself, how to heal wounds. Martha mentioned just yesterday that she could use help running the boarding house. The work is honest and the pay is fair. It could be a start. Olivia looked up at him, hope and fear warring in her expression. You have thought about this, about my future. I have thought about it, he admitted. I want you to have a chance at a real life, Olivia, not just survival, but actual happiness. Why do you care so much? The question was gentle, curious rather than defensive. Preston took a breath, considering his words carefully. Because in the short time I have known you, you have become important to me. Because I admire your strength and your courage. And because I think you deserve someone who cares about what happens to you. A blush colored Olivia's cheeks, and she looked down at her hands. I have not had anyone care about me in a very long time. I am not sure I remember how to let them. Then we will figure it out together. The next morning, Preston went to the marshal's office to give his report. Marshal Tucker was a grizzled man in his 60s who had seen just about everything the West could throw at him. He listened carefully as Preston described tracking the McCallister gang, the ambush, his escape into the canyon. You are lucky to be alive, son, Tucker said when Preston finished. We will put together a posse to go after them. You up for riding out again? Give me a few more days to heal and I will be ready. Fair enough. Take the time you need. Tucker leaned back in his chair, studying Preston with sharp eyes. Anything else you need to tell me? Preston hesitated, then made a decision. Actually, there is, but it needs to stay between us for now. Olivia Crane is alive. I found her in the canyon, been hiding there for 3 years since the stage attack. Tucker's eyebrows shot up. Olivia Crane, are you certain? She told me the whole story. About jumping from the stage, watching them kill the others, deciding to disappear rather than keep living in fear of Vance. Jesus. Tucker was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Does she know Vance is dead? I told her. She had no idea. She had been completely cut off from any news. What does she want to do now? She is trying to reintegrate slowly. She is staying at Martha's boarding house. I think she would like to keep her return quiet for a bit, just until she is ready to deal with questions and attention. Tucker nodded slowly. I can respect that. Far as I am concerned, Miss Crane can take all the time she needs. Lord knows she has earned some peace after what she went through. He paused, then added, You seem pretty invested in her welfare, Deputy. Preston met his gaze steadily. She saved my life, Marshal. Patched me up when I would have bled out otherwise. I owe her. Uh-huh. Well, you make sure that is all it is. Last thing that girl needs is someone taking advantage of her vulnerability. That is not what this is, Preston said firmly. I would never do that to her or anyone else. I believe you. Just wanted to make sure we were clear. Tucker stood and extended his hand. Welcome back, Preston. Take care of yourself and Miss Crane, and let me know when you are ready to ride after the McCallister gang. Preston returned to the boarding house to find Olivia helping Martha with the laundry. She had rolled up her sleeves and was scrubbing sheets in a large tub, her face flushed from the steam and effort. She looked up when Preston entered, and something about the scene, the domesticity of it, the normalcy, made his heart clench. How did it go? She asked. Fine. I told Marshal Tucker about you. He says you can take all the time you need before making any official statements. He will keep it quiet for now. Relief washed over Olivia's face. Thank you. I am not ready for everyone to know yet. I need time to find my footing first. That is exactly what I told him. Martha looked between them with a knowing smile. Olivia has been a natural help this morning. I meant what I said yesterday about needing an extra pair of hands around here. If you are interested, dear, the job is yours." "Really?" Olivia's face lit up with cautious hope. "You would hire me?" In a heartbeat. "You are a hard worker and I could use someone I can trust." "The pay is not much, but it includes room and board and the hours are reasonable." "I would love that," Olivia said. "Thank you, Martha. You do not know what this means to me." Preston watched the exchange with a warm feeling in his chest. This was exactly what Olivia needed. Meaningful work, a place to belong, people who valued her. It was a foundation she could build on. Over the following weeks, Preston watched Olivia slowly come back to life. She threw herself into her work at the boarding house, and Martha praised her constantly for her attention to detail and her way with the guests. But more than that, Preston saw her gradually relaxing, the constant tension in her shoulders easing bit by bit. They fell into a routine. Most evenings, after Olivia finished her work and Preston returned from his rounds, they would sit together on the boarding house porch. Sometimes they talked, sharing more stories of their pasts and their hopes for the future. Sometimes they simply sat in companionable silence, watching the town settle in for the night. "I never thought I could feel safe again," Olivia told him one evening as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. "But sitting here with you, I almost do." Almost. "There is still a part of me that is waiting for something terrible to happen. That expects this all to be taken away." Preston reached over and took her hand, a gesture that had become natural between them over the past weeks. "Nothing is going to take this away from you. You have earned this peace, Olivia. You deserve it." She squeezed his hand, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I do not know what I did to deserve you, Preston Rawlins. You were brave enough to let me help you. That is all you needed to do." As the weeks turned into months, Preston became aware that his feelings for Olivia were deepening into something more than friendship or protectiveness. He found himself looking for excuses to be near her, noticing small details like the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating or the soft sound of her humming when she thought no one was listening. He tried to be careful about his feelings, knowing that Olivia was still healing, still learning to trust the world again. The last thing he wanted was to pressure her or make her feel uncomfortable. But it became harder and harder to ignore the way his heart lifted when he saw her, the way he felt more alive in her presence than he had in years. Olivia seemed to be fighting her own battle. Preston caught her watching him sometimes with an expression he could not quite read, a mixture of longing and fear. She would blush when their eyes met and look away quickly, but not before he saw the truth written on her face. The turning point came on a warm evening in late September, nearly 4 months after Preston had first stumbled into Olivia's cave. They were sitting on the porch as usual, but this time Olivia was unusually quiet, her fingers plucking at her skirt in a nervous gesture. "Preston, I need to tell you something," she said finally, his heart clenched with sudden fear. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am fine. Better than fine, actually, but I have been thinking a lot lately about what I want about the future." She took a deep breath. "I want you to know that I am grateful for everything you have done for me. You saved me in more ways than one. You brought me back to life when I had given up on ever really living again." "Olivia, you do not have to thank me. I was happy to help. Please, let me finish." She turned to face him fully, her eyes earnest. "I am grateful, but that is not all I feel. Somewhere along the way, gratitude turned into something else, into something deeper. I have fallen in love with you, Preston, and I needed you to know that, even if you do not feel the same way." Preston's breath caught in his throat. All this time, he had been so careful about guarding his own feelings, afraid of overwhelming her, and she had been falling in love with him too. "Olivia," he said softly, reaching up to cup her face in his hands. "I do feel the same way. I have been in love with you for months now, but I did not want to rush you or make you feel pressured while you were still healing." Her eyes widened with wonder and relief. "You love me, with everything I have. You are the strongest, bravest, most remarkable woman I have ever met. I love your courage, your resilience, the way you see beauty in the world even after everything you have been through. I love you, Olivia Crane, and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you how much." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but they were happy tears, tears of joy and release. "I was so afraid to tell you. I thought maybe you were just being kind, that you could not possibly feel the same way about someone as broken as me." "You are not broken," Preston said fiercely. "You are healing, and that is completely different. And I would be honored to be part of that healing, if you will let me." Instead of answering with words, Olivia leaned forward and kissed him. It was soft and tentative at first, but then Preston wrapped his arms around her and pulled her closer, and the kiss deepened into something that spoke of love and hope and promise. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Olivia laughed, a sound of pure happiness that made Preston's heart soar. "I never thought I could feel this way again," she said. "Happy, safe, loved." "Get used to it," Preston said, pressing his forehead to hers. "Because I plan on making you feel that way every single day for the rest of our lives." The next morning, Preston asked Olivia to marry him properly, with a ring he bought from the jeweler in town and a proposal on one knee in the boarding house parlor. Olivia said yes through happy tears, and Martha, who had been eavesdropping shamelessly from the kitchen, rushed in to embrace them both. "It is about time," Martha declared. "I have been watching you two dance around each other for months. I am so happy for you both." They decided on a small ceremony, just close friends, in the little church at the edge of town. Olivia was still not ready for a big public spectacle, and Preston wanted nothing more than to marry the woman he loved, regardless of the size of the audience. Marshal Tucker agreed to stand up for Preston, and Martha for Olivia. The minister, a kind man named Reverend Williams, performed the ceremony on a crisp October morning with sunlight streaming through the church windows. Olivia wore a simple blue dress that Martha had helped her make, and she had never looked more beautiful to Preston. Her hair was pulled back with flowers, and her eyes shone with happiness as she spoke her vows. "I promise to trust you," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion clearly visible on her face. "To let you into my heart completely, without the walls I built to protect myself. I promise to be brave enough to love you fully, to build a life with you, to face whatever comes knowing we face it together." Preston's own vows came from the heart. "I promise to protect you, not because you need protecting, but because I want to stand beside you against anything that threatens our happiness. I promise to love you through the hard days and the easy ones, to be patient when old fears resurface, and to remind you every day how strong and remarkable you are. I promise to build a home with you, a place where you always feel safe and loved." When Reverend Williams pronounced them husband and wife, Preston kissed his bride with a tenderness that spoke of all his love and devotion. Olivia kissed him back, no longer afraid, no longer holding back, and it felt like the truest promise either of them had ever made. The reception was held at the boarding house, with Martha providing a feast that seemed impossible for one woman to have prepared. But other neighbors had contributed too, Preston realized, touched by their support. Word had gotten around about the deputy and the mysterious woman who had returned from the dead, and the community had embraced their love story. As the evening wore on and the guests began to drift away, Preston found himself standing on the porch with his new wife, watching the stars come out over Lordsburg. Happy, he asked, pulling her close. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Olivia replied. "A year ago, I was living alone in a cave, convinced I would die there. Now I am married to the most wonderful man I have ever known, with a home and friends and a future stretching out before me. It feels like a dream." "It is real," Preston assured her, "and it is only going to get better." They had rented a small house on the outskirts of town. Nothing fancy, but enough space for the two of them to start building their life together. That first night in their own home, they lay in bed talking about their dreams and plans. "I want children someday," Olivia said softly. "I want to give them the love and security I lost when my parents died. I want to show them that even when terrible things happen, you can survive and find happiness again." "We will have as many children as you want," Preston promised. "And they will be the luckiest kids in the territory because they will have you as their mother. And you as their father. You will teach them to be strong and kind and brave." Preston kissed her forehead. "We will teach them together." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm over the following months. Olivia continued working at the boarding house because she enjoyed it, though Martha insisted on reducing her hours now that she was married. Preston resumed his duties as deputy marshal, occasionally riding out to track down outlaws, but always making sure to come home to his wife. The McCallister gang was eventually caught and brought to justice, though Preston was not part of the posse that captured them. Marshal Tucker had assigned him to stay in town, perhaps recognizing that Preston had something more important to protect now than just upholding the law. As winter settled over New Mexico, Olivia and Preston made their house into a true home. They added curtains and rugs, pictures on the walls, a garden plot that would bloom in the spring. Every addition felt significant, a statement that this was permanent, that they were building something lasting. One evening in December, as they sat by the fire with snow falling softly outside, Olivia made an announcement. "Preston, I have some news." He looked up from the saddle he was mending, immediately attentive to the tone in her voice. "What is it?" A smile spread across her face, radiant and joyful. "We are going to have a baby, I am almost certain." Preston dropped the saddle and crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling Olivia into his arms. "Are you sure?" "When?" "I think in late summer." "I wanted to be certain before I told you, but all the signs are there." He held her at arm's length, studying her face with wonder and a touch of fear. "How do you feel? Are you well?" "I feel wonderful. A little tired, but mostly just happy. We are going to be parents, Preston." He kissed her then, pouring all his love and excitement into the gesture. When they finally pulled apart, both laughing, Preston knelt down and pressed his ear to her stomach, as if he could already hear the baby growing inside her. "Hello there, little one," he said softly. "Your mother and I cannot wait to meet you." Olivia ran her fingers through his hair, her expression tender. "You are going to be such a good father." "I am going to try my best." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Preston became increasingly protective as Olivia's belly grew. He fussed over her constantly, insisting she rest more, eat more, take better care of herself. Olivia bore his hovering with patient amusement, understanding that it came from love and the very natural fear of something going wrong. Martha took Olivia under her wing, sharing wisdom from her own pregnancies years ago and helping prepare for the baby's arrival. The women of Lordsburg, who had gradually accepted Olivia as one of their own, threw a small gathering to provide her with baby clothes and supplies. "I never expected this," Olivia told Preston that night, surrounded by tiny clothes and blankets. "I thought I had lost everything, that I would always be an outsider, but these women, this community, they have welcomed me with such kindness." "They see what I see," Preston said. "A strong, good woman who deserves every happiness." Their son was born on a sweltering August afternoon in 1884, after a labor that lasted nearly 20 hours and left both Olivia and Preston exhausted. But when the midwife placed the squalling infant in Olivia's arms, all the pain and fear melted away. "He is perfect," Olivia whispered, tears streaming down her face as she examined every tiny finger and toe. "Just like his mother," Preston said, his own eyes wet as he stroked the baby's downy head. They named him Thomas, after Olivia's father, and from the moment he entered the world, he became the center of their universe. Preston proved to be a devoted father, rising for nighttime feedings, changing diapers without complaint, spending hours just watching his son sleep. "I never knew I could love someone this much," he confessed one night as he rocked Thomas back to sleep. "Between you and him, my heart is so full it might burst." Olivia smiled from the bed, exhausted but happy. "We are very lucky." "No, I am the lucky one. You two are everything I never knew I needed." As Thomas grew from a baby into a toddler, Olivia and Preston's love deepened and matured. They faced the normal challenges of parenthood together, the sleepless nights and teething troubles, but they also experienced incredible joys. Thomas's first smile, his first steps, his first word, which was "Mama," and made Olivia cry with happiness. When Thomas was 2 years old, Olivia became pregnant again. This time, the news was met with excited anticipation rather than nervous wonder. They knew what to expect, felt more confident in their ability to handle whatever came. Their daughter was born in the spring of 1887, an easier birth than Thomas's had been. They named her Sarah, and she had Olivia's dark hair and Preston's eyes. Thomas was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to hold her and help take care of her. "We have to be gentle with baby Sarah," Olivia explained patiently as Thomas tried to share his wooden horse with his infant sister. "She is too little to play yet, but soon she will be big enough." The house that had seemed plenty large for two now felt smaller with 2 children running around, so Preston began building an addition, working on it in his spare time. Marshal Tucker, now in his 70s and considering retirement, had promoted Preston to chief deputy, which came with better pay and more regular hours. "You have a family to think about now," Tucker said. "Need to be around more, less time out chasing bandits." Preston was grateful for the change. As much as he believed in upholding the law, nothing mattered more to him than his wife and children. He wanted to be there to see them grow, to be present for all the small moments that made up a life. One evening when Thomas was 5 and Sarah was 2, Olivia found Preston sitting on the porch steps, looking out at the sunset. She settled beside him, and he automatically put his arm around her shoulders. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How different life is now compared to that night I stumbled into your cave, bleeding and desperate. If someone had told me then that I would end up here, with you and our children, living in a house we built together, I would not have believed them." "I would not have believed it either," Olivia admitted. "I thought I would die in that cave, alone and afraid. I never imagined I could have this, a real family, a real life. Do you ever miss it? The quiet, the solitude?" She considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it. Life was hard, but it was uncomplicated, but I would not trade this for anything. The chaos and noise and constant demands, all of it is worth it because I get to share it with you." Preston kissed the top of her head. "I love you, Olivia Rawlins. More than I could ever put into words. I love you too. Thank you for not giving up on me, for seeing past the scared woman hiding in a cave to the person I could become. You were always that person. You just needed a reason to show her to the world again." As the years passed, Thomas and Sarah grew into bright, curious children. Thomas showed an early interest in his father's work, always asking questions about being a lawman, about right and wrong, about how to help people. Sarah was quieter, more thoughtful, with a love of books and learning that reminded Preston of Olivia teaching herself to read in the cave. Preston and Olivia made sure to tell their children age-appropriate versions of how they met, wanting them to understand that sometimes life was difficult, but that perseverance and courage could lead to beautiful things. "Your mother is the bravest person I have ever known," Preston told them one night at bedtime. "She survived things that would have broken most people, and she did not let those experiences make her bitter or cruel. She chose to keep hoping, to keep believing in the possibility of happiness. That is real courage." "Tell us about the cave again," Thomas begged, as he always did. So Preston told them about tracking the outlaws, about getting shot, about finding their mother in the hidden cave where she had made a life for herself. He told them about how their mother had saved his life, how she had cared for his wounds and given him shelter. And he told them about falling in love, about recognizing in each other a kindred spirit who understood loneliness and fear, but also hope and resilience. "And then you got married and had us," Sarah said, as if completing a familiar story. "And then we got married and had you," Preston confirmed. "The best decision I ever made was asking your mother to marry me. Well, second best. The best decision was following her when she said I could stay in her cave that night." Olivia, listening from the doorway, felt tears prick her eyes. Even after all these years, Preston still had the ability to move her with his words, to remind her how precious their love was. Marshal Tucker retired in 1890, and to no one's surprise, Preston was named his replacement. At 32 years old, he was young for the position, but his dedication and integrity had earned him the respect of the community. "Your pa is the marshal now," Olivia told the children, her pride evident. "That is a very important job." "Does that mean he has to go away more?" Thomas asked, worry creasing his 8-year-old face. "No, son," Preston assured him. "It actually means I will be around more. The marshal handles the administration, coordinates the deputies. Less riding out, more staying close to home." "Good," Sarah declared. "We need you here." Preston scooped his 5-year-old daughter into his arms, "And there is nowhere I would rather be." With Preston's increased salary, they were able to make more improvements to the house. They added a proper study where Preston could work and the children could do their schoolwork. They built a larger barn for the horses. They even hired a woman to help Olivia with the housework, a few days a week, giving her more time to pursue her own interests. Olivia had discovered a talent for healing, learned during her years of necessity in the cave, and refined through books and practice. She began helping Dr. Patterson, the town physician, with patients who needed wound care or nursing. It was unofficial at first, just neighbors asking for help, but eventually she became known as someone skilled in medical matters. "You could train formally," Dr. Patterson suggested. "You have the knowledge and the temperament. We could use another medical professional in this territory." Olivia considered it but ultimately decided against formal training. "I like what I do now, helping when I can but still having time for my family. That balance is important to me." In 1892, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again, a surprise given that Sarah was now 5 and they had thought their family was complete. But the news was welcomed with joy by the whole family. "Another baby," Sarah squealed, dancing around the kitchen. "Can it be a girl this time?" "We will love whatever we get," Olivia said, though privately she hoped for another girl to keep Sarah company. This pregnancy was harder than the previous 2. Olivia was older now, nearly 30, and her body did not bounce back from the demands as easily as it once had. Preston worried constantly, hovering even more than he had with the first 2 pregnancies. "I am fine," Olivia assured him for what felt like the 100th time. "Women have babies at my age all the time." "Not my woman," Preston said stubbornly. "I am allowed to worry." Their third child, another son they named Daniel, was born in early 1893 after a difficult labor that left Olivia weak and exhausted. But he was healthy and loud, making his presence known from the moment he entered the world. Thomas and Sarah were thrilled with their baby brother, fighting over who got to hold him, who got to help with feedings, who got to rock him to sleep. It warmed Olivia's heart to see her children so loving and attentive. "We are truly blessed," she told Preston as they watched the 3 children together, Thomas carefully showing Sarah how to support Daniel's head. "More than blessed," Preston agreed. "We have everything that matters." Life continued its steady rhythm through the 1890s. Thomas grew into a responsible young man who announced at 15 that he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps and become a lawman. Sarah developed a passion for teaching and began helping at the schoolhouse. Daniel showed signs of his mother's healing talents, always bringing home injured animals to nurse back to health. Preston and Olivia watched their children grow with pride and a touch of wistfulness. The years were passing quickly, and the babies they had cradled were becoming independent young people with dreams and plans of their own. Where did the time go? Olivia wondered aloud one evening. They were in their 40s now, with streaks of silver in their hair and laugh lines around their eyes. But when Preston looked at her, he still saw the brave, beautiful woman he had found in that cave so many years ago. "I do not know," he admitted, "but I would not change a single moment of it." They were sitting on their porch, as they had countless times over the years, watching the sun set over Lordsburg. The town had grown substantially, with electric lights being installed on the main street and talk of telephone lines coming soon. The Wild West of Preston's youth was giving way to a more civilized era, but some things remained constant. "You remember when we used to sit on the boarding house porch?" Olivia asked. "Before we were married, when we were still figuring out what we meant to each other." "I remember everything about those days. I remember being afraid to tell you how I felt, worried that you would not feel the same way or that I would scare you off." "I was doing the same thing," Olivia admitted. "I was so in love with you but terrified of being vulnerable, of opening myself up to potentially being hurt again. But you were brave enough to do it anyway. You told me you loved me and everything changed." "Everything was already changing," Olivia corrected. "From the moment you stumbled into my cave, my life began moving in a new direction. I just did not realize it at first." Preston reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together as naturally as breathing. "I think about that night sometimes, about how many things had to go exactly right for us to find each other. If the McCallister gang had not ambushed me, if I had not found your cave, if you had not been brave enough to help a stranger, none of this would exist. You believe in fate?" Olivia asked. "I did not used to, but now I think maybe some things are meant to be. Maybe we were meant to find each other, to save each other, to build this life together." They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands and watching their world settle into evening. Inside the house, they could hear their children laughing, the sounds of a family at ease with each other. It was everything Olivia had dreamed of during those lonely nights in the cave, everything Preston had hoped for but never quite believed he would find. "Thank you," Olivia said softly. "For what?" "For finding me. For seeing me, really seeing me, not just the scared woman hiding from the world but the person I could be with the right support. For loving me enough to be patient while I learned to trust again. For giving me this beautiful life." Preston brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "You gave me just as much. You gave me love, a family, a reason to come home every night. You made me believe that good things could happen, that happiness was possible. I am the one who should be thanking you." "Then we will thank each other," Olivia said with a smile, "for being brave enough to take a chance on love when we both had every reason to protect our hearts." Thomas turned 18 in 1900, and true to his word, he applied to become a deputy marshal, working under his father's supervision. Preston was both proud and terrified, knowing the dangers of law enforcement but also recognizing his son's determination and sense of justice. "You take care of yourself out there," Olivia told Thomas, her voice catching with emotion. "You remember everything your father taught you." "I will, Ma," Thomas promised, hugging her tight. "I will make you both proud." "You already have," Preston said, clapping his son on the shoulder. "Every single day." Sarah, at 16, had taken a position as the assistant teacher at the Lordsburg school. She had a natural gift for working with children, patient and creative in her methods. She reminded Preston so much of Olivia, with that same quiet strength and compassion. Daniel, at 8, was the baby of the family and fully aware of it. He charmed everyone he met with his easy smile and quick wit, but he also showed a serious side when caring for the injured animals he collected. "You have 3 wonderful children," Martha told Olivia one afternoon. Martha was in her 70s now, still running the boarding house with help from her niece. "You and Preston must be so proud." "We are," Olivia confirmed. "They are each so different, but they all have good hearts. That is what matters most." As the new century dawned, Preston and Olivia found themselves entering a new phase of life. Their children were growing into adults, needing them less and less. It was bittersweet, watching them become independent, but it also gave Preston and Olivia more time together. They took to riding out into the desert on Sunday afternoons, just the two of them, exploring the landscape they both loved. Sometimes they would pack a lunch and make a day of it, and more than once they had ridden out to the canyon where they first met. The cave was still there, of course, weathered by time but largely unchanged. Olivia would stand at the entrance, looking back at that chapter of her life with a mixture of sadness and gratitude. "I hated it here," she said during one visit. "I hated being alone, hated being afraid, hated that my life had been reduced to mere survival. But this place also saved me. It gave me shelter when I had nothing else. It kept me alive until you found me." Preston wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had not been shot that night? If I had never found you?" "I try not to think about it," Olivia admitted, "because the alternative is too sad. I probably would have stayed here until I died, never knowing that Richard Vance was dead, never reclaiming my life. I would have wasted years hiding from ghosts. But that did not happen. I did find you and you did reclaim your life. You did more than that. You built something beautiful from the ashes of what you lost." Olivia turned in his arms to face him. They were both in their late 40s now, their bodies marked by time and hard work, but to each other they were still the young people who had fallen in love against all odds. "We built it together," she corrected. "I could not have done any of this without you." "We make a good team," Preston agreed, kissing her forehead. In 1905, Thomas married a young woman named Catherine who worked at the general store. The wedding was held in the same church where Preston and Olivia had married. And as Preston walked his son down the aisle, he could not help but think about the passage of time, about how quickly children grew and started families of their own. "You look beautiful," Olivia whispered to Catherine before the ceremony, helping her arrange her veil. "Thank you, Mrs. Rawlins, for everything. Thomas is so lucky to have parents like you and the Marshal." "We are the lucky ones," Olivia assured her. And please call me Olivia. We are family now." 2 years later, Sarah announced her engagement to Robert, a teacher who had moved to Lordsburg from back east. He was kind and intelligent, clearly devoted to Sarah, and both Preston and Olivia approved wholeheartedly. 2 weddings in 3 years, Preston marveled. "Our little ones are all grown up." "Not all of them," Olivia reminded him. "Daniel is still just 15. But even Daniel would not stay young forever. He had already announced his intention to study medicine, inspired by watching his mother help Dr. Patterson over the years. Olivia was both proud and wistful, knowing her baby would eventually leave home to pursue his education. "It is the way of things," Preston said when she expressed these feelings. "We raise them to be independent, to go out into the world and make their own way. That means we did our job right." "I know, but that does not make it any easier to watch them go." Preston pulled her close, understanding her mixed emotions because he shared them. "We will always have each other," he promised. "When the house gets quiet and all the children have moved on, it will still be you and me, just like it started." "That is a comforting thought," Olivia admitted. "You and me against the world, always." Thomas and Catherine had their first child, a daughter named Elizabeth, in 1906, making Preston and Olivia grandparents for the first time. Holding that tiny baby, seeing their son as a father, was a profound experience that brought tears to both their eyes. "She has your eyes," Preston told Olivia, studying his granddaughter's tiny face. "And your determination, if the way she grips my finger is any indication," Olivia replied with a laugh. Being grandparents brought a new kind of joy into their lives. They could spoil Elizabeth, play with her, enjoy her company, and then return her to her parents when she got fussy. It was all the fun of children with less of the responsibility. Sarah and Robert had twin boys the following year. And suddenly, Preston and Olivia's house was full of grandchildren on the weekends, with happy chaos and laughter echoing through the rooms. "This is what it is all about," Preston said one Sunday afternoon, watching Olivia on the floor playing blocks with the twins while Elizabeth helped by knocking down whatever they built. "Family, love, continuity." "Are you getting philosophical in your old age?" Olivia teased. "Maybe a little." "Can you blame me? Look at what we have created. 3 good children who have become wonderful adults. Grandchildren who are healthy and loved. A community that respects us. It is more than I ever dreamed possible." Olivia stood and crossed to where Preston sat, settling herself in his lap despite their age. "We have been very fortunate. More than fortunate. Blessed." They kissed, soft and sweet, a gesture of love refined by decades of practice. The grandchildren giggled at seeing their grandparents being affectionate, but Preston and Olivia did not care. They had never been shy about showing their love for each other. Daniel left for medical school in 1910, heading to Santa Fe to pursue his education. It was the first time in nearly 30 years that Preston and Olivia's house was truly empty, with all their children grown and gone. The silence felt strange at first, almost uncomfortable after so many years of noise and activity. But gradually they adjusted to it, rediscovering the simple pleasure of each other's company without the demands of parenthood. "We should travel," Preston suggested one evening. "We have never really gone anywhere, always too busy with work and children, but we could now. We could see some of the places we always talked about." Olivia's eyes lit up at the suggestion. "Where would we go?" "Anywhere you want. California to see the ocean, Denver to see the mountains, back to Texas where I grew up. You choose." They started with shorter trips, weekend excursions to neighboring towns and interesting sites within the territory. Then, as they grew more confident, they ventured further. They took a train to San Francisco and stood on the beach, watching the waves crash against the shore with wonder. They visited the Grand Canyon and marveled at its scope and beauty. They even traveled back to Texas so Olivia could see where Preston had grown up. Each trip was an adventure, a chance to make new memories together. But they always came back to Lordsburg, to the home they had built, to the community that had supported them through the years. Preston retired as Marshal in 1915, at the age of 57. His hair was more silver than brown now, and his joints ached on cold mornings, but he was healthy and happy, ready to spend his remaining years enjoying life rather than chasing criminals. "You have earned your rest," the mayor told him at his retirement ceremony. "You have served this town with distinction for over 30 years. Lordsburg is safer and better because of you." Thomas took over as Marshal, a natural transition that pleased everyone. He had proven himself over the years, earning the same respect and trust his father had commanded. "I have big shoes to fill," Thomas said during his swearing-in ceremony. "You will do fine," Preston assured him. "You are a good man and a good lawman. Trust your instincts and treat people fairly. That is all it takes." Retirement suited Preston. He spent his days working in the garden, taking care of the horses, doing small repairs around the house. But mostly, he spent time with Olivia, enjoying the quiet companionship that came from a lifetime together. They celebrated their 32nd wedding anniversary in 1915 and their 33rd the following year. Each anniversary was marked with a quiet dinner and the exchange of small gifts, but the real gift was simply having more time together. "Do you remember what you promised me on our wedding day?" Olivia asked during their 33rd anniversary dinner. "I promised you many things. Which one are you thinking of? You promised to remind me every day how strong and remarkable I am. And have I kept that promise?" "Every single day," Olivia confirmed, her eyes shining. "Even when I did not believe it myself, you believed it for me. That is the greatest gift you could have given me." Preston reached across the table to take her hand. "You are the greatest gift I have ever received. Finding you in that cave was the luckiest moment of my life." "We were both lucky," Olivia said. "Lucky to find each other, lucky to have the courage to take a chance on love, lucky to have built this beautiful life together." As they moved into their 60s, Preston and Olivia settled into a peaceful rhythm. They were pillars of the Lordsburg community, respected elders whose opinion was sought on important matters. They were devoted grandparents, always happy to watch the grandchildren when needed. And they were still deeply in love, finishing each other's sentences, communicating with glances and small gestures that spoke of profound intimacy. "I never get tired of looking at you," Preston said one evening as they sat on their porch, watching another sunset. It had become their favorite ritual, this quiet time together at the end of each day. "Even though I am old and gray," Olivia teased. "You are distinguished and elegant," Preston corrected. "And you are more beautiful to me now than the day I met you." Flatterer, truth-teller. They held hands in the twilight, content in the knowledge that they had lived well, loved fully, and created something meaningful together. Their children were grown and happy. Their grandchildren were thriving. Their love had not just endured but had grown stronger with each passing year. "If I could go back and talk to that scared woman hiding in a cave," Olivia said softly, "I would tell her that everything is going to be all right, better than all right. I would tell her that a wounded cowboy is going to stumble into her life and change everything, and that she should be brave enough to let him in. And if I could go back and talk to that young deputy bleeding in the canyon, I would tell him that getting shot was the best thing that ever happened to him, because it led him to you. We have been so fortunate, Preston, so incredibly fortunate. Not fortune," Preston disagreed gently. "Love. We chose each other, chose to take a chance when it would have been easier and safer to walk away. That is not luck or fortune, that is courage and commitment and love. As the sun finally dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple, Preston and Olivia remained on their porch, holding hands and watching the stars begin to appear. They had weathered storms and celebrated joys, faced challenges and overcome obstacles, all while holding fast to each other. Their story, which had begun so improbably in a hidden cave in the New Mexico wilderness, had become a testament to the power of love and resilience. They had both been broken by life, damaged and afraid, but together they had healed and built something beautiful from their shared pain. "I love you, Olivia Rawlins," Preston said, as he had said countless times over their decades together. "I love you too, Preston Rawlins," Olivia replied, the words as true and meaningful as the first time she had spoken them. "For always and forever." And there on the porch of the home they had built together, surrounded by the life they had created, two souls who had found each other against all odds continued their journey together into the peaceful evening, grateful for every moment, treasured and complete.